Hello and welcome to Extraordinary with me, James Wallace, the podcast that shines a light on ordinary people who have gone on to do and see extraordinary things. And in this episode, I am joined by the amazing life coach that is Gemma Perlin.
I would say we're not human doings, we're not robots, we're not computers, we're actually human beings, and we're incredibly sensitive. So this whole kind of okay, you've got to just get back into normal life now. There's kind of quite a lot of hardness around that.
Gemma tells me what it was like to transition away from TV production into the world of life coaching. It's a super fascinating conversation because Gemma has walked the walk and she can talk the talk. She's had a career and now she coaches others on how to navigate theirs.
People believe that when they go out on a big night out, they have to be some other kind of person, and that feels like effort. Whereas for some people, going out is actually when they're their true self. So they may feel that when they're being at home, watching TV, that that's not who they really are. So the arena to really be who they want to be is in a massive nightclub.
I found this conversation super interesting. If you're interested in psychology, well-being, mindfulness, mindset, this is a podcast for you.
If you have these glasses on that are I'm not worthy, I don't have anything useful to say, everywhere you look, you'll find reasons why you're not the right person to speak in the presentation. You're not the right person to stand up and present to your company.
And as always, if you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I did making it, then please don't forget to head over from wherever you're listening from to leave a rating or a review. And of course, if you really want to show some love, then please share it with friends and family as well. It just means the world to me and helps the podcast keep going and growing. So without further ado, enjoy the show. So Gemma, thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate you being here. Before we get started, I would love you to tell me a bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Gemma and I'm a coach and I specialise in behaviour change. And what that means is I help people change the way that they think so that they can live a life that they feel really excited about.
Oh, I love what an elevator pitch. That's probably the best elevator pitch I've ever heard.
Honestly, just that's what came to me right now. It changes
Really?
Every moment, every day. Yeah, so that's just how I feel this morning.
And that leads me on to my next question, which is, because I think there was a writer in there somewhere in that little speech that was very good copywriting. But tell me a little bit about how you ended up being here. How did you get to be a life coach? If we were to go back and connect all the dots, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in a very kind of academic school, all about getting the straight A stars at GCSE on that track. And I always really wanted to work in TV when I was from the age of about 16. My mom worked in TV. It always seemed really exciting to me. So I spent about 10 years working kind of from the ages, and I went to university in between and studied politics, pretty much trying to get as far ahead as I could in the world of documentary and kind of political satire as well. And it was really, really, really fun, but I never felt particularly connected to it. I say to people sometimes, it was a job that when you go to a party and you tell people that you work in TV, people want to talk to you. It's glamorous. It seems cool. You get invited to fun things.
Yeah.
You're always about, always on the go. But internally, the experience I found was one of a lot of anxiety. But to be honest, my anxiety at that time was not necessarily about the job specifically, but sort of around, I'd say my early to mid 20s, I started getting kind of quite ill, physically unwell. My body basically just started attacking myself. Everything in my body just didn't really want to work. Just kind of my stomach, my bladder, my eyes, my body was attacking itself. And I didn't think that was connected at all to my mind. I just thought, there's something wrong with my body. How infuriating that it's not letting me do what I really want to do. Anyway, what happened next was looking for a way, and I had loads of 50 million doctors, all these things, tried every sort of medication, all these things. I was well, it would be good, I suppose, with resistance, to think about how my mind plays into all of this. And then I discovered this framework, and the framework changed my life. And literally, I remember it so clearly, a week, maybe a day into studying this and doing it and experiencing it, I was right, this is what I'm going to do now for the rest of my life. And that hasn't changed since then.
Really? So was when you say you got taught about this framework, was that in a therapy session type thing?
So I had been aware of neurolinguistic programming. So I'm a
Oh wow.
master NLP practitioner for a while, and I just had something within me without even having a session. I decided to sign up to become a practitioner. Just like sign up.
And if, as my very limited understanding of NLP is that this is like
Yeah.
heavy going stuff. Like it's a
Not
whole thing.
a whole thing. I would say it's a model of a way of understanding human change. I don't find it. I'm interested in what feels heavy about it, what feels like a heavy thing.
Well, I was told that it's kind of like it's like a whole, I guess it was described to me, it's like you've got in science, you've got like chemistry, biology, physics. Like it's almost like a whole different science to understanding everything. It's like a mixture of psychology, sociology, biology to some extent as well. And it's like, it's not like a psychological theory, it's way bigger than that. But again, I might be talking absolute gibberish, so I'm leaning on you to help me and whoever's listening understand what NLP is in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I think what comes across from what you're saying, which I think is really important about NLP, is I like to think that it basically takes everything that's worked in different modalities of like therapy and psychology and then creates an understanding of like how we can actually create change. So it's not about why you are the way that you are, it's about how we can create something different instead. For example, why do some people have anxiety around public speaking, but other people don't? And when people were able to stop feeling anxious about public speaking and become really confident, what actually happened there? And then they turn that into models. And then people like me learn to understand these models. And then we can help people set them free from the things that hold them back.
Wow, that is so interesting. So,
Great.
were you kind of like in this instance, like the client? Someone had said, right, I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm going to tell you about this, I don't know, framework, model, whatever. And then once you understood that, you were like, wow, like I feel like you felt empowered to go on and study it and become a practitioner yourself. Is that right?
I literally just signed up to become a practitioner. I learned all of this on the practitioner course. So I started, and part of learning, it's not theoretical really. NLP, you need to really do it. So
Mm,
we would be coaching each other, and I'd be doing a process with someone who literally, like me, had no idea what I was doing, and I was still experiencing huge shifts in my way I felt. And then things started changing in my life, and then over the course then of about 2.5 years, I did more and more studying, getting more and more advanced into it. And like I always say to people, like this isn't something I studied and just like learn like theoretically. Like I've gone through all of this myself. When I have someone sitting in front of me being like, "Oh my god, okay, wow," I'm like, "Yeah, like, I've been there, and like I changed my entire life because of it."
it's insane. So, but from a career perspective, you're like, dealing with anxiety and having sort of a physical and, mental reaction to kind of the work that you were doing, which I guess in hindsight, you probably didn't love as much as you thought you did. Um, did you immediately decide to make a career change? Like, what does that transition look like?
Well, that transition looked like financially I couldn't do that, right? So I had obligations and responsibilities. So what I did was as much as possible, I did as much free stuff at the weekends or in my free time, to get as much experience. And you need to do a certain amount of like hours in that sense. And then I started to see clients in the evenings and at the weekends. Then I managed to get a great job kind of during the pandemic where I was able to do 1 day a week, seeing clients. And I just gradually and gradually built it up. And then I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I don't need to do this anymore. But for me, I guess in a way, it was less of a leap, I'd like to say, than for other people because I was a freelancer. So I wasn't quitting a job. I was just saying no to contracts.
Mm. And that makes a big difference, right? Because it means that you're the master of your own time. You can do what
I
you
could
want.
still go back and work in TV right now if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, it didn't feel like a door closing. But I think there needs to be some kind of like, if someone's listening right now and they're thinking about changing what they do, there does need to be some kind of urgency behind it. And like, I really couldn't do TV anymore. Like, I was being asked to do things that I physically couldn't do. And doctors were saying, you're not physically fit to go on a plane and fly to America and do 14-hour day shifts. Like, I had to find something else.
Oh wow. Is that the sort of stuff you were being asked to do?
Yeah. TV is like, you'll be sitting at home tomorrow. Okay, we need you on a red eye to wherever that someone's just given us access to this cult. You need to go and film with them.
I mean, to me, that sounds really fun and glamorous, but I totally get that you can. It's probably fun the first time, the second time less fun, and then third time not fun at all. Um,
Yeah, you don't know who you're going with as well.
yeah, that's also true. But like, I've kind of got one little foot in the door of production as well because I work in marketing, TV, advertising space as well. But I'm very much not on the front line of production, and I always think that they have got like they're real unsung heroes, the people that kind of produce this amazing TV and film that we watch. And we don't often see how many hours and how much blood, sweat, and tears goes into film. So like fair play, and I can only imagine how kind of draining it is to work, in that industry. But was there a day, I guess, where you're in training, you're becoming an NLP practitioner? Was that you have to start, I guess, like building a client base, and was there a day you kind of said, right, no more TV, I'm full time life coach?
Yeah, it was. It was my body basically told me. I was offered a sort of a 5 month job as a producer on like a very prestigious BBC Three thing. Right, it was
Oh
a thing that
wow,
would be
okay.
good for my career, and I got the email, and I felt nothing but sick dread. And my brain was saying, Gemma, why? This is like the thing that you always. And my body literally was just like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, right, I can't do this anymore. I have to do this full time.
Sounds like an easy enough
Yeah,
decision.
it didn't actually feel that hard.
Did you have a support network at the time? Did you like have to? Did you use your parents? You said your mum was in TV. Like, what kind of pressures or not did you have around you?
So I had my parents who are just like so supportive and like just do what you need to do. And
Mm,
they could see they were at the front line for the last 10 years of like all the stress that I experienced with TV, like, financial, like, am I going to get a job? Am I not going to get a job? Or like, I'm working with this person, they're really difficult, but I can't complain because I'm a freelancer. So if I complain about someone, I'm going to get a bad reputation. Like, they were involved in this hamster wheel of stress. They were just so supportive about me exploring something that would make me feel better.
mm.
And one of my best friends, she ran her own business. She'd never had a boss, so she was just totally like, right, helping me, giving me the confidence to because I could see someone else who'd done it.
Mm.
And so that was really, really helpful. And also, this period was also happening during the kind of beginnings of the pandemic, and everyone around me just was like, "This is your time." So if I just told someone randomly, I mean, was I even telling people randomly? Because I don't think I was talking to anyone in this time
Yeah,
period. Um, but there was just such an appetite to understand a bit more about the mind and how we can best support ourselves and feel better.
that's amazing. So it's kind of an if not now, when moment that just like spurred you on. That sounds amazing. Um, so was there anything kind of like going even further back, potentially in your childhood and teenage years? Was there anything that you kind of like in hindsight, you can see how you were always maybe destined to work in the field that you do? Or did it just come because this random by chance exposure to NLP?
I think it was like the reason that got into TV is I've always been really interested in understanding how people feel and how, like,
Mm,
getting control of that and being in charge of how you feel. And I guess understanding people's differences and then also their similarities. So in TV, that looked like I really enjoyed interviewing people and finding out why they do the things that they do. Really similar to what you do, right?
yeah.
But I found it limiting. And I remember very immediately finding it very limiting, even in my first job, that I couldn't actually change anything. I was basically creating a vehicle with which people could tell me something. I could put it out in the world, and then maybe some change could be created. But that always felt a little bit nebulous to me. Even I remember when I was doing like news stuff when I was like 17. Um, so I think there was always like a little bit of frustration right from the beginning that I couldn't help people, that I just had to sort of film it and then stop.
So you were like just telling a story in a moment in time, but what you really wanted to do was actually, continue the story and help change and help make it better, I
Yeah,
guess.
and that got really, I would say, worse the more like entrenched I got in TV, because the sort of people I was talking to had then begun to experience, so much more. Like one memory that really sticks in my head was also I went to meet up with I was working on a BBC Two series about terrorism, and there was an awful terrorist attack in Sri Lanka, an English family, and two of their children died. And I met up with, maybe 5 days after it had happened, with one of the children. He didn't go, and he lost two of his siblings. And I met with him, and I had absolutely no idea how to talk to him, what to say. And at that point, I was like, I don't actually feel equipped for the job that I do, because I'm regularly speaking to people who'd experienced so much. It was the Finsbury Park bus, that particular project. We weren't, I didn't feel like I had the tools really. And it always just felt kind of challenging just leaving someone from that. I remember watching him walk away, and I'm like, I just think we just spoke about this, but I'm pretty sure this is going to make you feel worse, because you just had to speak for an hour to me
About losing his siblings.
about losing your siblings. And that's really kind of stuck something in me.
Do you feel like there's been, just on a side note, there's been a bit of a turning point though for TV? I'm just thinking with the Jeremy Kyle saga, that mental health is actually having, well, I was going to say comeuppance, but mental health is being taken more seriously in the TV industry. Just Love Island and Big Brother and reality TV, there's more psych checks now than before, or do you not feel like it's gone, when we're doing enough?
I think externally for people who are on shows, definitely, but I don't know. From behind the scenes of people that I still talk to, I'd say it's a really toxic industry still. And the reason that so many brilliant people continue to do it is because they really love it. But I'd say a culture that's based on scarcity. There's not enough jobs for the people that there are, and all on kind of reputation, i.e., you don't get a job through applying on a website mainly. You get a job because you've worked with someone before and they mention your name in an office and they say, what are they like?
Yeah.
And if you've someone who's complained about someone who's bullying you, you're not going to get another job. So until that changes, I'm kind of unconvinced. And I think there's been a lot of like stuff that people have tried to do. There's charities, all these kind of things, but the inherent culture of that freelance world, I don't think has really changed.
That is so interesting. Yeah, because you're very, like, you're constantly incentivized to like build up this ridiculous persona or reputation where you're all things to all people, right?
Yeah.
Like I had another podcast guest who's an art director, and he was saying how like he's in the Facebook groups, you're constantly hustling with producers about trying to get your name and foot in the door. It's like who knows who, and it's not really a meritocratic or fair industry by the sounds of it. But you've stepped away, which is great for everyone. Um, so let's move on to talk a little bit about the day to day of being a life coach, because I think it's a concept that I think, through film and TV, funnily enough, people have ideas and perceptions of, but I don't think, and I speak, well, I certainly don't think I truly understand what a life coach is and what it does versus what a therapist does. So I just wondered if you would be able to tell me a little bit about it in your own words, what it is a life coach does and how that differs to therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such a good question, and something that I honestly didn't really understand until I sort of became a coach. So a therapist, I'd say therapy sessions, and this is obviously me explaining I'm not a therapist. From my understanding, it's about processing things that have happened in the past. And there's no pressure or agenda about having to create change. It's about processing what has happened and understanding why the way that you feel right now, or the way things seem right now, can be linked to your past, and giving a space for that. Coaching is much more future focused. Coaching is like, how can I get from where I am right now to where I really want to get to? And we might need to go back to the past to undo and let go of some things that might be stopping you or blocking you getting to the future. But when we go back to the past, we're trying to work out more how that happened rather than why, because we can't change the past, right? And that's like an ultimate presupposition of NLP, really, is like, you can't change the past. You're never too old, though, to create a happy childhood, i.e., you can go back and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
that's
like,
kind of a blurred line with therapy, though, because I guess a therapist would also kind of touch on those sorts of themes.
yeah,
I would imagine.
absolutely. But I don't know if the therapy, and again, if a therapist is listening, apologies if I'm getting this wrong. I don't think it's not about, you don't need to get somewhere. It's
No.
about holding a space for that.
Yeah. Yes, I'd imagine in therapy, like the objective is to build a happier life, be happier. But I
Yeah.
guess people are coming to you with much more pointy, specific objectives and goals in life that they want to achieve. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. People come to me and it's like, what do you want? Let's make this happen.
So, but is it fair to say, like, for example, I'm sure there's lots of people out there, I may be one of them, where I know I've got like lofty ambitions and goals, but I'm not really sure what they are. Is that something a life coach could help me uncover, for example?
Yeah. So I'd say actually, interestingly, I'm going to kind of be hypocritical of what I just said. The majority of people come to me and they're really stuck because they don't know what they want. They just know what they're doing right now isn't right. So some people who come with the people who actually come with a more specific shopping list, often when we get down to it, it's actually not the things that they want, they're the things that they think they should want. But I'd say the majority of the person comes to me, it's either this is stopping me living my life, this kind of behavior, this kind of experience, anxiety, this sort of phobia, whatever, or it's I'm really stuck. I don't know what I want. I feel so disconnected from what's actually happening, but I know I could be happier.
And I guess you're probably exposed to people who've already done some introspection and the work to know that they are in need of a coach. So, what kind of signs and signals do people typically have before they come and like knock on your door and say help?
Yeah, really good question. So a lot of people I work with have had therapy. I think it's also really worth pointing out that I've had therapy and I find it incredibly useful. I'm not having therapy at the moment, but I definitely feel like it's something I would return to in the future. Um, so a lot of people have had therapy and some of them are very clued up about why they're doing all the things that they do. And they found it really useful, but they're still stuck about how to actually implement those changes to start doing the things that they want. Um, some people have had no therapy. They've never done any work. It's quite a lot of my male clients, but they just know that they like the idea of something really focused and something which they're going to see tangible benefits from. Um, I think it's that feeling of like I just don't feel right. I just don't feel like I'm me at the moment, or like this sensation is really like stopping me being me. That feels like something that comes up quite a lot. I'd say the signs.
But it's normally a thing it's like a cause and effect situation. There is something that is making them feel a bit icky and they don't know why or how to fix it.
Yeah, or like I keep doing the pattern of behavior. I know it
Mm,
doesn't make sense, but I just can't seem to stop it. And I've been doing this for so many years, and like enough is enough.
interesting. That's a good point, actually. So, what's the relationship with kind of life coaching NLP with CBT, for example?
So I think they're both, and I don't know that much about CBT, but I think they're both outcome based. Um, but my understanding of CBT is that it's more of a generic approach. Like these are these tools, whereas NLP is really interested in like an individual person because the way that you experience reality is totally different to another person. So if I just, it's not a like, oh, we can just use one process because a James is different than a Gemma, right? The
Correct.
way that
Yeah.
you process information, the beliefs that you have about the world, whether you're like a visual or an auditory person, whether you feel things or things seem a certain way, that that really impacts what you do. So I think for me, and again, I don't know that much about CBT, NLP, that there's more dynamism, I would say, for
Yeah.
me. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I had a CBT. I had 3 CBT sessions like many, many years ago, and I just this is going to sound so offensive. So apologies to anyone who is practicing, but I thought it was awful. I was just like, I don't get it. This isn't working. This just feels. Maybe it was because it wasn't suited or tailored enough to me, but it just whatever the very lovely practitioner was trying to do just wasn't working
yeah,
for
I
me.
mean, I had a really like not a great experience with this. I had a CBT session when I was experiencing a lot of pain. I went to see a health CBT
Mm,
professional, and it wasn't helpful for me. And I think it's I know that it can be helpful for people, but a lot of my clients have found it unhelpful. And the only thing that I find really hard is because it's prescribed by the NHS. I've had people come to me and they're like, oh yeah, like I'm just like out of ideas because CBT didn't work for me and I've had anxiety for 10 years. And then we do a session and they're like, well, that's so I feel better already. And it gives them hope. So I think if you're listening and you've had CBT and you're like, if it's worked for you, great. But if it hasn't, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, well, me and James both saying it didn't help us, but it just means that they just try something different. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not one, or just because the NHS prescribes it for a variety of reasons that aren't necessarily connected to how effective it is for people.
That's the problem. Like, I mean, anyone who's listening would have heard me bang on about how valuable I think therapy is, and I think there's anyone who's gone through therapy will always be. I've yet to meet someone who's had therapy and hated it, but and I'm sure there are people out there who didn't have a positive experience. But for the most part, most people love and have really sort of found value in having therapy and or life coaching, and it just beggars belief why that isn't on the NHS, but CBT is.
It's to do with pricing. We can get that's a whole other conversation, but it's to do with the fact that they with therapy requires more sessions, whereas CBT they can say here's 6 sessions, off you go, and
Good
that's
luck.
that's some clinical there's some clinical information that passes NHS guidelines. Interestingly, on my coaching program, I do 6 sessions with people.
Is
But
that the kind of the package? Is that how it
yeah,
works?
so I work with people apart from with phobias. I tend to just do 1 session with people with phobias
Oh,
because that's really
interesting.
all it takes. But usually I work across 3 to 4 months with people across 6 sessions, and that's like the coaching program that I do.
Regardless of the issue or the severity or how long it's been going on, it's 6 sessions up to.
Because I'm less interested, I suppose, from if I'm taking like a lot of steps back, I'm changing the structure of I'm helping people show them how to change the structure of the system of the way that they've been thinking, feeling, behaving, acting. And regardless of the content, we're dealing with, it depends how entrenched it is, right? But we're dealing with the unconscious mind. And I think, it doesn't mean but that you need 6 sessions to start feeling great. After 1 session, people feel different. There's a shift already. Like I remember I did one exercise in my practitioner that like completely changes something that even today I think about regularly. So but when we're changing, and I'm working on like the idea that there's neuroplasticity in the brain so that we can change the way that we think, we need to it's really helpful to have someone continuing to help you change the way you think, because then we're creating a new pathway, and it will still be really easy at the beginning to go down the old pathway. So I need that time with people and that kind of space between sessions where they keep going down this new pathway, keep trying it the other way to show their unconscious mind that it is safe, that it is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I work across that amount of sessions.
Yeah. I've heard lots of habit kind of thinkers and theorists talk about repeating those new neurological pathways, and that's how new habits are formed. So that all makes complete sense. As you were talking though, and I don't know why my mind kind of went over there, but sometimes it does, but if you can help rewire the way people think about things that are negatively impacting them, is this kind of a theory or kind of a platform that can be used to justify things like conversion therapy in kind of in the world of sexuality? Like could like back in the day when, well, I think conversion therapy is still a thing in the UK, but do the conversion therapists kind of use NLP as kind of justification for their practices?
My God, I don't know. I just the thing about NLP is, and the way that I've been trained thoroughly by what I believe is the most rigorous, kind of board, is that it always has to have it has to be what the client wants, number one, and what they really, really want, but also has to have ecology for the rest of the world and for other people. And I mean, the moment you said conversion therapy, my body just like totally like feels as stiff as a board and terrified, and like that just like it's like, is that what is useful in the world, stopping people being who they really are? who's that for? Is it for the client? Is it for the person? What's the ripple effect for the everyone else, other people in society?
Yeah, it's got to be ethical, right?
Yeah,
Like, and
it's
that
gonna be
and that
ethical.
wouldn't be ethical.
Yeah, and I know that, for example, because what I'm trained in is really powerful, and I was thoroughly like spoken to before I started training by someone to check why I really wanted to do this.
Really, they like had to like
Yeah,
check you.
because you want to check when you're showing people ways that you can help people. And people are always in charge of what they're doing, but you need to be really clear. Like, what are your goals? What are your intentions? And my intention every time I sit with someone is I look at them and I think I actually look at them how they want to be. So when they tell me what they want, I see them as that person. I'm talking to that person. And my intention in that session then is just to help them and show them the solutions to get to where they want to be.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it's just so powerful. And I was looking at your Instagram, like I was saying just before we started recording, like last night, and I was looking at all the press and all the work that you were doing during the pandemic, because I think it's a real kind of interesting period of time for all sorts of, for all sorts of social scientists or people who are just interested in like the human mind, on how people adjusted and sort of dealt with the pandemic. And you've written about kind of social anxiety and relationships and friendships and all sorts of things that have changed in the last couple of years for all people, but I think it's fair to say that young people in particular have been most impacted, or impacted to quite a large extent. So I just wondered if you've got any thoughts on the relationship between the sorts of issues that you're dealing with in your coaching rooms and the pandemic, if at all.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was really had a very privileged position in that period between people sort of returning back to work as well. Um, around, it's not normal for us all to be locked away and disconnected. I don't stating the obvious, right? But then that kind of feeling then of going back and being in a room full of people, because I think our minds and our bodies weren't used to it. So we're not, I would say, like, we're not human doings, we're not robots, we're not computers, we're actually human beings, and we're incredibly sensitive. So this whole kind of like, okay, you got to start just get back into normal life now, there's kind of like quite a lot of hardness around that. So I think it was about gently, and I always say it's like, there's loads of little steps. How can we best support ourselves in returning back to work, returning back to that life? But for a lot of people, that time away was like, okay, I actually got perspective. And for a lot of people, it's like, I don't really think I want to be doing that anymore. Or like, I didn't really enjoy like going to the pub every Saturday night. Or like, I didn't really enjoy this. I was just doing this because it was something that I felt that I should do. And the pandemic was such a destructive thing. But I would say the positives that I've seen from it are that people actually really connected to what they actually really wanted. They got off what I would call like the train tracks, the hamster wheel of doing things, shoulds, all these things, and actually really got protective of like, what do I actually really like?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this podcast started before that very reason. Like, I was on a serious hamster wheel, like coffees, lunches, brunches, gym, nights out, sleep, gym, works, coffee, brunches, lunches, gym, sleep, work. And it was just like, and then pandemic happened and I was like, oh my God, like, oh, TV. Like, I never watched TV really. I never watched like series. And I was like, oh, look, I'm getting into TV. I'm reading books. I painted my flat. And then I started a podcast and I realized that I actually have like really different interests to what my actual lifestyle was doing
Mhm.
before, like in normal times, pre pandemic. And that's really stuck with me, as in my lifestyle has massively changed. I don't go out anywhere near as much. Obviously, I'm 3 years older now, but like I'm like done with the clubbing. I'm done with the drinking. I like held my hands up till my friends were like, "Yeah, do you know what? Like, I just don't like nights out anymore. I'm not going to drink. I'm gonna like have an early night, meet you for a coffee, meet you for, dinner. But then I want to be in bed by like 9:30, 10. And I've been doing that for 2, 3 years now. And obviously, I've got a podcast now. I started a photography side hustle business thing. Um, and obviously we still work from home a lot of the time, so yeah, no, I can completely subscribe to that. Everything you just described was like me all over. But I remember must have been like a few days before, I think we called it at the time like Liberation Day, or Freedom Day. It was like some July 2021, And I was like, I had like a lot of social anxiety because people were buying me tickets for like big club nights and stuff. And I was like, I just don't want to go. Like, I just don't want to go. I don't know what I'm going to wear. People are going to see me out in public for the first time. I felt all very exposed. Obviously, it was all me, all very self indulgent. But I did a poll on Instagram, and I was like, guys, like, I'm really interested. Who has social anxiety about, Liberation Day or whatever it was, and who wants to stay indoors for a little bit longer? And it was like 60-40. Like, the numbers were really interesting. Like 40% of people had social anxiety and 60% of people were like, oh my God, get me a drink, I'm going out. And it's interesting because everyone, to your point, everyone is different. And I'm really interested in why some people like me, who was, super off the charts extrovert, all of a sudden found themselves being like, I don't want to go out anymore. Like, I've got mild social anxiety. And some people who have similar situation to me, they may live alone, they may live with their family, but they were desperate to go out again. Like, how do we've all been through the same thing? Why do some people go one way and some the other? And I would welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, really interesting question. Beliefs. It's about beliefs and values, and beliefs control everything that we do. They're the kind of bedrock of all our behavior. And beliefs aren't facts, they're thoughts that we think a lot. So we can actually change them. But it sounds like your belief shifted in the pandemic, right? At least about what made you happy or things that you really liked. And that's cool because we have this whole thing called behavioral flexibility. That sometimes you really enjoy doing some things in your life, and there'll be times when you don't and you like prefer to do other things. We don't need to just be one static version of ourselves. But it sounds like, yeah, just some people believe that that was the thing that was going to make them really happy, was going out. And some people believe that actually going out felt a bit scary, and what felt better was staying inside and keeping on that same routine. And that there were certain ways of like being, right? Some people believe that when they go out on a big night out, they have to be some other kind of person. And that feels like effort. Whereas for some people, going out is actually when they're their true self. So they may feel that when they're being at home, watching TV, that like that's not who they really are. So the arena to really be who they want to be is in a massive nightclub.
Interesting. And I guess am I right in thinking that the life coach would have a different view on that to like a therapist? Because I can imagine a therapist who comes from like, I guess the deep rooted like Freud school of thought or whatever would be sitting there being think like would listen to that and think, oh, probably need to unpick that a little bit. Like, why is it that you feel like you're your truest self in a big nightclub? Because surely that
Well,
would come with
beliefs are
some
formed,
issues.
like most of our beliefs are formed before the age of 6. So I do work
Yes.
with people where we do, and this I guess is another thing that makes it different to therapy, is I get people to close their eyes, I get them to stand up, I lead them through processes which are mind and body. So we'll be looking at what's going on somatically, which is just a fancy way of saying what's happening in here. I would be interested not necessarily to know why, but necessarily to know how that belief was then formed. So I work with people with social anxiety all the time, and it's usually something that happened when they're at school, and that gets lodged in their unconscious mind, and they can consciously know that they're a 35-year-old man right now, but something inside them is being taken back to that moment of when they were 14 and they stood up and everyone laughed at them. So rather than going and staying just on that moment, it's about going back to that moment, but disassociating from it and changing the way that it happened so that you can, in the present moment, experience things differently.
Wow. God, the mind's so powerful, isn't it?
Crazy. I mean, the unconscious mind controls 95% of what we do, but we rarely, have conversations with it, right? So all the processes that I do with people are all towards the unconscious mind, because consciously we can go around in circles in our head, and obviously this is a podcast, so no one can see what I'm doing with my hand, but I'm talking with my hands, and it's like the the shitty committee that lives rent free in our head.
Yes, shitty committee. I love that.
Committee, like we get stuck with this itty bitty shitty voice, and if we always listen to this voice, we actually can't really change. And sometimes when we get stuck in conscious kind of conversations, that voice just goes in circles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. Yeah. Talked about that a lot on therapy as well. Kind of people, Jekyll and Hyde and the chimp paradox, and it's all good angel, bad devil. Yeah. There's constant paradoxes in our heads. I think it's fascinating. And on that point, do you see, has there been kind of a change in behaviors towards sort of life coaching, towards, you know, mental health and self-development in recent years? I certainly feel like there has been. Maybe that's because I do podcasts and I talk a lot about mental health and I'm in therapy myself. But, you know, in the world, you know, are you seeing more people more, you know, interested in the topic?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started coaching, I thought coaching was something that people who were sort of CEOs of very big companies had. Or I thought it was something that people did in LA and it was a bit like woo woo for like celebrities. I had absolutely no idea that coaching is literally for everyone and it's just as like it's just, you know, as the kind of approachable and you know, I guess implementable as therapy is. So I had a total misconception about it. And it's interesting. I do think since I've become a coach, people are now sort of starting to see the benefit that it can really be for everyone. But it's still, I believe, something much more in the US people think is a kind of standard procedure. Whereas I definitely find in the UK, people are still slightly confused by it or they think it's somehow, I guess, indulgent. Whereas therapy is now seen as something that's more like, right, I need to have therapy. Whereas coaching is seen as a bit like, oh, okay, but I'm not like the boss of a FTSE 100 company. Whereas actually coaching might be right for you at a certain point in your life when therapy isn't, and vice versa. But it's interesting. I did a workshop the other week for a venture capital fund, and a lot of people there are based, like, worked in Silicon Valley, and they totally immediately understood the value of what I offer and what I'm trained in and what I do because they're
Mm.
just leap years ahead in America.
Leap years, yeah. It's just not the British way, is it? It's
No,
just
the
stiff
idea
upper
of like
lip.
making things better, optimizing. It's always about for us, the British, was like getting away from things. How can we not get into this situation? Whereas I'm like, well, let's just dream about what we want, and that's kind of a weird feeling sometimes for our sensibilities.
Mm. Generationally, though, do you think we're changing? Do you think like millennials and Gen Z that come after us are kind of more open to the ideas of coaching and therapy?
Without question, like, definitely. And I think like the fact that, you know, I'm very lucky to have some of my clients like share what we do publicly on social media. And like I don't believe that that would have even happened like, I don't know, 10 years ago. Or like I remember when I was at school there was a counselor and I don't think anyone ever used to go and see them, and we really needed to go and see her, but
Of
it was
course, yeah,
shameful. I remember her room was like somewhere like sort of dark end, like almost in a broom cupboard, and even if you walk near that room, you'd have to be like, well, I'm not going to see the counsellor, I'm just going over here.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I do think their definitely attitudes have changed, but I do worry sometimes that we can know things, but we don't really like do them for ourselves. They're like, oh, that's a good idea. We should do that. We should, you know, have therapy or coaching or whatever it is, and whatever feels most useful for you. But we don't actually, you know, live them.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and I've seen that, you know, firsthand in my own friendship groups. You know, I've said, you know, I've always, since the day I started, I was like, I'm seeing a therapist, like, you know, Monday evenings, that's what I do. And at the beginning, people are like, okay, we won't ask any more questions. And that, because it's like, oh, there's obviously something wrong and we don't want to sort of trigger or like rock the boat or like ask too many questions. Whereas now they're like, oh, okay, like, do you enjoy it? Like, tell me a bit about it. How does it work? Because it is a really difficult thing and everyone will have a different experience of it. And every therapist is different as well. They follow different theories, modalities, you know, practices, etc. So it is really difficult, and I've always found it difficult to package up and articulate the value and the benefits of it. And I'm working on that. But I think you just know, as a I guess a client or recipient of it, of any sort of coaching or therapy, that it is, you know, infinitely, like, it just changes your life in so many ways. I think you said just before there was one framework or one kind of theory that was explained to you that's kind of that you think about every day and change your mind. I have the same. Like, there was one thing that was just explained to me once, a really irrelevant like side topic, and I think about it all the time, about, you know, in how I interact with people and that theory. So all sorts of things can come of it. But I've noticed, like, even in the last 6 months, 6 to 12 months, like, more people are open and thinking more about it, and realizing that actually you don't have to have a massive trauma or an addiction, or you know, you don't have to have suffering with grief to see someone. I think everyone in so many different ways can benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like, I think it's really cool that you told your friends, because it might have not seemed to have had much impact at the time, but it really will, because you just need to see that one person is doing something, and then it sometimes seems okay. And I did an Instagram post a while ago, which is like, you know, things don't have to be bad to work with a coach or therapist. Like, same way that, we go to the gym to work our muscles, we need tools to be able to work our minds. And I say, like, you know, life happens, and isn't it best to have the most adaptable, great tools at your hand to know how to deal with it? So we're building a toolkit. We're not trying to make everything okay, because we can't control the world and other people, but we're trying to build ourselves right in the strongest way, so that when things do happen, we can navigate them the best that we can with all the resources that we have.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really nice way of putting it. And you used an example at the beginning, right at the top, about how, I think the example you gave is some people can do TED Talks and some people have all sorts of anxiety and extreme nervousness around it. And obviously, I think it's fair to say everyone would get nervous doing a TED Talk. So that's probably a bit of an extreme example. But public speaking in general, like some people just have a massive aversion to speaking in public, whereas some people don't. And I'm really, really interested in kind of why you think that is. I'm assuming it might be something to do with beliefs.
Yeah, it's definitely to do with beliefs, and it really stems a lot from, like, people who find it easy. They feel inherently, and they look through the world as evidence that they have something to share. It's all about the lenses that you put on, right? So if you're wearing glasses that show you everything, supports this idea that I have a value, I have something to share. Whereas if you have these glasses on that are like, I'm not worthy, I don't have anything useful to say, everywhere you look, you'll find reasons why you're not the right person to speak in the presentation. You're not the right person to stand up and present, like, to your company. Um, and that is really, really integral. And the great thing is about beliefs is that if you talk to someone, I always talk to people who do things that I don't understand why. And that's your podcast is so cool, right? For that. But it's like, I can't do that. How do I know why? And I remember when I first started, it was like quite intimidating, because I was coaching someone, like a man who was a lot older than me, and, had achieved a lot of, like, financial success. And I spoke to my friend about it, who started a company when he was very young, and he was always in a board meeting with a lot of people. And I was like, but don't you feel like, a fraud, an imposter, whatever? And he's like, no, because I have something totally unique to offer. Like, I have such value there that they don't understand, like, that they won't get. So he's like, I don't feel nervous, because every time I sit in that room, I embody, like, he embodies that basically. So I think that it's all about those beliefs, and people just naturally have these beliefs, probably from childhood. Men tend to have these beliefs slightly more than women, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's all about going back and working out how we can change them and what you'd like them to be instead, and building of, like, well, why is it going to be great to have this? Like, how great could it be if you could just stand up in a meeting and you don't go red and you don't feel nervous about the
Yeah.
butterflies in your stomach, but you just feel excited?
Yeah. Is there a lot of visualizations that you have to do by way of, like, as part of the coaching? Is like, imagine what that would feel like if you were standing on the TEDx giving a talk. Like, do you have to actually visualize it?
You have to get really specific, and that's visual, it's audio, it's how it feels,
Mm,
how it sounds. It's like everything has to be locked in, because it's like, if you're traveling to a destination right now, you need to put it into your sat nav, and the moment you put it into your phone or wherever, you get all these routes that then lead you there. But if you don't have those routes, how does your body and your nervous system know how to carry you there? Like, whenever I do, like, events or things like that, I basically put into my sat nav how I want to feel when I walk out. What's happened. I don't need to worry too much. Obviously, I'll prepare, but, like, I don't need to worry about too much what happens in between, because I ultimately, in my body and my mind, knows where I'm going.
that's amazing. That's
So a lot of
such a
the
good
like,
way. Yeah,
there's visualizations that I've done with, like, people that message me. I've got an email this morning from someone being like, just did that thing that we did a year ago. Like, it literally, like, it's like I do it, like, whenever I have a meeting, and it, like, totally changes the game. Like, the meeting went amazing. Thank you.
that's amazing. So good. And I remember, Stephen Bartlett talks about this as well, because he's obviously super young. He's the youngest dragon that there's ever been, and he's been asked, and he talks a lot about imposter syndrome. And he actually went on stage recently and said that he's actually stopped talking about imposter syndrome because he thinks it's quite a negative word. It kind of implies that you are an imposter, whereas he was coming from a point which is how you described it, which is like, you're not an imposter, you have a different thing to add. Like, there's always going to be someone who's bigger, brighter, fatter, slimmer, richer, poorer than you. You're not going to be the top of the game in everything you do. And he talks about, I'm a big Stephen Bartlett fan, by the way, but like in Happy Sexy Millionaire, like he talks about how he at one point had the biggest social media marketing company in the world or whatever, but he's by no means the best at social media. He's 70% good at lots of different things that laddered up to him being the best at his game in the industry. So it's like, you don't have to, I think, and we as individuals put ourselves under so much pressure to like be amazing at something. Like, I put myself under loads of pressure to be the best podcaster. But to what we were saying before, there's always going to be someone who's got a bigger production team, and is investing more money in tech. So like, I'm not gonna win that war. But if I can improve, it's the 1% better every day type approach, then that's enough for me, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's about being on your own track of where you want to get to. And I like totally endorse that 1% every day. And it's about your unique, the way that you ask questions, the way that you engage with people, the people that you speak, choose to speak to. There's such magic to how you do that, and no one else can do that. And so people don't seem like, what I find amazing working with people is often the things that people believe hold them back, give them some kind of magic in a way.
Yeah.
And it's about utilizing those things to allow you that when you show up, whether it's on a stage or in a conversation or whatever, that really allow you to be you. Because I was really good at like pretending to be someone else who I thought everyone really wanted and who thought was a good work colleague, who thought was a good daughter, a girlfriend, friend, whatever it was. And that was, exhausting me, making me ill, all these kind of things.
Yeah, I bet.
So it's like when we can actually just show up and just be like, right, this is who I actually am, but I know there's something useful about it. Like I think people get there like, yeah, just be you. But I'm like, yeah, but just being you actually like will make you more successful. Like when I just was me and I just was the coach that I really wanted to be, right? Which is like, I got tougher, right, with people. I'd be like, right, after every session, I'd be like, okay, what are we doing next session? What are you going to come to me? And I was like scared at the beginning of doing it. So like, what if people don't like me? Then I realized, okay, it doesn't matter if people don't like me. I just want to be the best coach that I can be. Genuinely, the results that I started getting with people changed by like 1,000%.
100%. I love that, and I think like, I say to my therapist sometimes, I was like, you need to challenge me more. Like, you need to be harder on me, because this is, I need you to like really push me. But I know it, and I guess it comes back to kind of what incentivizes different people. Some people are stick people, some people are carrot people, I guess.
I sound quite tough, like not tough, but like I'm
Mm.
pretty, because I feel really passionate about transformation. I'm like, okay, so we do this work, and it's like, but tangibly, what have we're
You've
going
got
to
to
do
see
that. We're like, oh
results.
wow, so I've actually got to do this. I'm like, yeah, this is an abstract conversation. This is something that you've got the opportunity now to take out into the world. And like, if you don't want to do that, like we need to find out why, and we can definitely explore that. But if that's something you really want, we actually need to do it. You actually need to
Yeah.
do it. You take responsibility and do it. And that might feel tricky sometimes, but then people come back to me beaming, I did it. This thing that I thought I could never do, I've done it now. Great. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it's
So what are you doing
huge.
next?
Huge. And it comes back to kind of, when I've read books on habit forming, James Clear, Atomic Habits is a good example of this. He always talks about there has to be urgent and immediate results as well for something to stick. So you as a client, I was going to say patient, it's not, that sounds a bit aggressive. You would need to see results quite quickly for you to. It's like weight loss, right? If you're on a diet and you don't see you losing weight in the first week to 10 days, you're more likely to quit the diet. Like you want to see results for it to kind of, for you to keep going. Very interesting stuff. So again, so moving into kind of like your own guiding beliefs and values and self-development, what do you do, if anything, to like look after your own mental health? Do you have any practices or kind of daily habits or routines that you implement?
Yeah, absolutely. So something I discovered recently is that I don't like the specifics of like having to have a morning routine, because it actually makes me quite stressed that if I don't do something, that I'm somehow not going to be an optimal human being.
Yeah.
So I've actually got an anti-morning routine now. But I think I ask myself when I wake up in the morning what I'm really excited about for the day. What's what I'm looking forward to, because I'm programming myself then for success, right? So I like, what am I excited about? What's going to be good today? Um, and
Do
I'm
you do
really
that in
bad.
a formal way? Like, or do you, you lie in bed and you say, right, Gemma, like it's Monday. What are we excited about?
Yeah, what's great about today? I'm like, what's great about today? So that's really important for me to do. People can journal that as well. And then I go to bed at night and I'm like, yeah, what went great today? What could have done better? What could I do more of? So I always ask the questions like in that kind of frame. So what could I do more of? Not what did I fuck up on, or what did I not do well? What could I have done more on? Um, and another thing is I'm always like learning something new, because I learn a lot about myself through that. So at the moment I'm learning to play tennis. I'm really bad at it, but that's really interesting. So learning a new skill. I have coaching myself. I have supervision. I have training. I'm always going off and training more in NLP or modalities that are similar to it. And I've just started doing five rhythms, which is this kind of crazy dance thing, which really helps me kind of look after my body. If you want to have them both really
Writes down five rhythms to
five
Google
rhythms, it's a little
afterwards.
bit
Yeah.
woo woo. I'm probably not recommending this to like my engineering clients, but maybe it's really fun.
What about like I mean, do you do yoga, meditation, manifestations, affirmations? Like, do you subscribe to any of those sorts of things?
I think I absolutely affirmation's an interesting one. They'll only work if you're really specific about them. And you really think about what you're going to lose if you get that one. So I think I definitely set goals, and I'm really honest about them. And I sit down and do them. I think it's really helpful to do them with someone else, though. So I probably do that in more of a coaching session. Meditation, I met a man, he's a kind of medicine man in Bali in the summer. And he told me that I needed to stop eating my thoughts. And the way that I stop eating my thoughts is I need to sit every evening for 10 minutes and just empty my brain.
Yeah, this whole concept of unpacking, like I've never been good at it. I don't know how
I'm
to
not
do
great
it.
at it. I'm a real so I sort of just sit there for 10 minutes and just sort of try and unempty my mind. And I don't worry too much about what happens. I don't need to have anything profound happen. I'm just like, oh, I'm just sort of emptying the dishwasher of my mind.
That's good. That's great. Um, did you go to this like was it the really famous guru man in Bali?
I didn't go to him. I went to someone, he's called Pac-Man, if anyone's listening and going to Bali,
Ooh.
and he's amazing and he's really good for physical stuff. And he yeah, I have an autoimmune disease, and
Oh wow.
he's got me off a lot of the medication that I was on, which is kind of amazing. So yeah, he
Interesting stuff.
really interesting. He basically just moves your body, but he's like, you need to keep this going. You need to keep that relaxation in the body and the mind, and just stop stressing out. Basically, everything's translated by his wife. Though, so it's like direct translation is stop eating your thoughts.
Smart. I mean, that it feels an accurate translation.
Yeah.
Um, no, that's super interesting. I'm really interested. I'm trying to read up on, there's a book called like The Body Knows the Score and what is it like Magic Medicine and all that kind of
It's the
stuff.
number one book I recommend to people. The Body Keeps the Score.
Really, that's
Very good.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you quite spiritual? Is it fair to say?
Um. So I'm Jewish culturally, but I would say it's a very cultural identity. But I would say I'm not really Jewish in a religious way. I don't feel that connected to the religious elements of it. But
Mm.
I guess it's like, what does spirituality mean to you? I do feel there's some things that I can't quite explain sometimes. Some things that happen sometimes that I can be doing a Zoom call with a client in the US and I can feel something in my body that they're experiencing in that moment too. But I think that's just kind of rapport and chemical science and weird atoms, basically, I've been told by scientists. But spirituality for me means, I think, that I'm connected to something greater than myself and that I feel part of something. And I guess within that, I do feel spirituality, and being able to see things that have changed in my life and that I can't quite understand how, but they've just happened, that I just will have thoughts and sit down and think about something and put energy towards it, and it will just happen, does slightly confuse me. And I think it is part of the spirituality that I just sort of think, okay, that's just the way it works.
Yeah, no, I completely subscribe to everything you just said. I think I'm a big believer in like energy and vibes, and I don't know if that means spirituality or not. I'm
Yeah,
not, but I do believe, and I think it's a nice belief to have in karma and doing good, and sort of it's like going on a first date with someone. Like there's an energy there. I wouldn't necessarily that's the most spiritual sort of comment I've ever made, but like I think that's part of it, right? There has to be some sort of unwritten, intangible thing that we all experience in day to day life.
absolutely. Like you just walk into a room and I've always been, I think when you asked me that question at the beginning about, well, when I did it, was there ever anything that like gave me this intuition that I was going to do this? I've always been really sensitive to people's energies. Like,
Mm.
and I didn't really know what that was. I thought that was just sort of me being indulgent in myself. But I think it's like I'm very aware of like what people are providing and giving, and but energy follows intention. So if you put energy towards something, the intention has to come first. And I believe our
Yes.
energies can change. Like I've seen clients' energies change, my energy change. My coach always takes the piss out of me by like, I walked in and I was like really cynical about everything. I was like, this is going to be shit. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just here because, like, I had a very different energy than the energy that I have now. And I know I can go back to that energy if I want to,
Oh
but it's
yeah.
just not useful to me.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. Walked into my first ever therapy session, and I think I sat there for an hour, non-stop talking. I didn't come up for breath, and it was all 100% negative about why life is shit, why this has happened. This all keeps happening to me. Victim, victim, victim. And then, it was actually recently. So, like 18 months later, he was just like, I just want to say, like, I've noticed a real big change in your energy. And it meant, like, for me, that meant so much that someone had recognized the change as well. Like, I feel like we don't reassure or give credit to people's behavior change enough. I think we all kind of, I notice in my friends, like, some people are much happier and healthier and they glow more a bit, but I never really tell them. And I
You
want to
should
make more.
tell them
I
because
know I should
I
tell
tell my
them.
clients, I'm always like, you look like you've had like, like just been in Bali for a month when they leave sometimes because it's like they lose. Like, I had a session a few months ago and I genuinely looked like my face changed in like the session because I
For the
let go
better.
of all this crap.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing when things like that happen. But yeah, no, it's super interesting the discussions around spirituality and kind of energy. Um, so I mean, I could talk to you all day. I'm having the
Me
best
too.
time. But we have to end at some point, and I always ask my podcast guests to write a letter to their younger selves because I think it's a really good reflection when we talk about people being extraordinary. And everyone has got an extraordinary story, and I think yours is super super interesting. So if you've got something prepared, I would love to hear the advice that younger Gemma needed to hear.
Yeah, this is a really cool task. So thank you for that. I just had some thoughts this morning.
Amazing.
I'm not sure if they'll make sense to anyone but me, but it's
Doesn't
okay.
matter. Doesn't matter. We're all interested.
It's like, hi, Gemma. I know you're worried now that you feel fear and that you're alone and that you're confused because everything really looks, in inverted commas, great on the outside. You're really good at putting a performance on. It's time to stop doing that. It's going to make you really unwell. You've worried a lot. It's okay to stop that now. You're going to go on a journey and you're going to need to unlearn a lot of the things that you really thought were true. It'll make you feel different at first, like people won't get you. But I promise all the layers beneath you are lovable, softer, and who you really are. It's going to be wild and a lot of fun. Everything you thought held you back, I promise you, has now been the things that will get you to where you are right now, where you will be right now. You will feel well. You will find connection to a group of people that you have no idea exist yet. You will feel free. Just remember to soften towards yourself. Keep focusing on what you want and just soften.
Amazing. That's so sweet.
What is
I
it
thought
this
I always
morning in
find it
bed?
interesting, not to. I mean, obviously that's incredibly like emotional, powerful, and extremely kind of personal. But I'm always struck by how many people come on here with their letter to their younger selves and they talk about how lonely they were as children. And it's like everyone, we as kids, we all we wanted to do was belong. And so many people who I've spoken to on this podcast journey just felt so alone.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I have like the best parents in the world, like
Yeah.
best friends. But and that person's always, I was an only child. So my parents did everything they could to, make me feel not alone. Like
That's
amazing.
so
But,
cute.
I just felt alone. And that's nothing to do with brothers and sisters. It's like an internal feeling, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sense of where do you belong in the world? Are you proud? Would kind of younger Gemma be very proud of who she is today?
I think she thinks she was like quite naughty because she didn't follow the track that she was meant to follow and that the school probably expected of her. So I think she's like quite wild. She'd be like, she's quite cool. She's a bit of a wild card. Like, I wonder how well she's going to do in her A levels though. Like, but maybe it didn't matter.
Did you put yourself under a lot of pressure to achieve academically?
Huge pressure, crazy pressure. And like that, I guess part of that letter was like, it's not that important. But like, she didn't know that because she was in a bubble of that she thought that was her card to a good life. So I
Yeah.
think the thing that she'd be really impressed by Gemma now would be like, oh, that she discovered that there was lots of choice.
Yeah. And she rebelled a bit and she didn't necessarily follow the rule book or become an accountant or a doctor because that's boring.
But awesome if that's what makes you really, really happy though. So I have friends who are
I know
accountants
that's
and they love
unfair.
it. So
Sorry, doctors. Sorry, accountants.
James,
You
take that
have cool jobs. I promise.
back.
No, but it's 100%. Again, I see a lot of myself in that because I didn't know. The schools I went to, I didn't know what a career in production looked like. It wasn't even. I mean, thank God you had your mum as a reference point. But certainly that was not. I mean, media studies wasn't an option in the school that I went to. But if it was, maybe I would have done that, and maybe I would have studied at university, and maybe I would have started a podcast 10 years ago. But I think it's really important to reflect on the fact that when we're younger, we weren't given all the options or the choices, and you have to go and find them.
And I believe that like defining them is often the interesting bit. Like the podcast that you would have done 10 years ago wouldn't be the magic that it is now, right?
No, it would have been shit. But no, that's a really, really powerful letter to your younger self. So thank you very much for doing that. I know it's not easy, and a lot of thought and effort and emotion obviously goes into it. So I really appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Gemma, thank you so much. Like I said, I could talk to you all day. I find you fascinating. The work that you do is fascinating. I'll leave your socials and your websites, etc., in the show notes. But just thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, James. I've had so much fun.
No, pleasure's all mine, and I hope to see you very soon.
Bye.
Bye. Cheers, Gemma. Bye. Thank you as always for listening to yet another podcast episode, and if you enjoyed listening to this as much as I did making it, then I would really appreciate it if you headed over to wherever it is that you're listening from to leave a rating or a review. And if you haven't subscribed, and if you click the little subscribe button, it just means you get notified when new episodes get released, so it just helps you and I both out massively. But until next time, take care, stay safe, and I will see you very soon.